Welcome to Time with Grandpa and Grandma. It's good to have you back. Grandma today has a story for us. It's a Thanksgiving story, right? It's
Yes.
the original one, or?
Well, it's about the original Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And it's an important one because I didn't learn the truth about this for many years. And so I want you all to hear the exciting truth about this story. Okay, it's called The Origins of Thanksgiving. And I've taken it from an article that was in the Legal Alert, which is a monthly publication of the Christian Law Association. Okay, I'm going to be reading it to you. Most school children today are taught that Thanksgiving originated when the Pilgrims invited their Native American friends to dinner to thank them for providing food and drink after the Mayflower landed. As with much of modern American revisionist history, there is really much more to the story. The Atlantic crossing in the fall of 1620 had been an extremely difficult journey for the Pilgrims. For 2 months, 102 people were wedged in what was called the 'tween decks. That means the Mayflowers had different decks and they couldn't go up above. And it says the ship's cargo was area was only about 5.5 feet of headroom. And that's where they were. No one was allowed above deck because of the terrible storms. This was no pleasure trip. The Pilgrims comforted themselves on their journey by singing the Book of Psalms. This, quote, noise irritated one of the ship's paid crew members. He told the Pilgrims that he was looking forward to throwing their corpse, which are dead bodies, overboard after they succumbed to the routine illnesses common on such voyages. As it turned out, this crew member was the only person to die on the voyage and be thrown overboard. God providentially protected his own people. A little known fact about the Mayflower is that the ship normally carried a cargo of wine, and the wine spillage from previous voyages had soaked the beams, acting as a disinfectant to prevent the spread of disease. During one terrible storm, the main beam from the mast cracked. The ship was certain, or excuse me, death was certain if this beam could not be repaired. At that moment, the whole pilgrim adventure could very easily have ended at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. But providentially, the pilgrims had with them a large printing press screw. The screw repaired the beam, saving the ship and all aboard. After 60 days at sea, land was sighted off Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Not the place where the Pilgrims wanted to be. They intended to establish their new colony in the northern parts of Virginia, which then extended to the Hudson River in modern day New York. But two factors interrupted their plans. The winds had blown them off course, yes, but later they learned that other Englishmen who wanted to settle in the same part of Virginia had actually bribed the ship's crew to land them further north. Despite this trickery, God was in charge, and the Pilgrims landed exactly where God wanted them to be. Had they actually made landfall near the Hudson River, they most certainly would have been immediately attacked by hostile Indians. Instead, they arrived at the one spot along the coast where hostile Indians had been providentially removed from the land. Many years before the Mayflower journey, local Indians had captured a Frenchman on a fishing expedition in that region. Just as they were about to kill him, the Frenchman warned them that God would be angry and would destroy them all and would replace them with another nations. The Indians boastfully replied that his God could never kill them. Yet, a year or two before the Pilgrims arrived in this very same region, nearly all the native inhabitants had been wiped out by a plague. Despite the miraculous provision of safety from hostile Indians, the Pilgrims barely survived their first winter on the Cape. In fact, I've learned later that half of them died. Only 4 families remained intact, but God was still faithful. In the spring of 1621, he sent Squanto, an English-speaking Indian, who offered to teach the Pilgrims how to survive in this strange land. Squanto was one of only a few local Indians who had escaped the plague. He had been captured as a young man and taken to England as a slave. During that time, he mastered the English language. When he was freed, he returned to his native territory on the Cape shortly before the Pilgrims arrived. Probably the most important thing that Squanto taught the Indians was how to plant the native winter staple, which was corn. The Pilgrims thanked God for this wonderful helper. They repaid Squanto by sharing with him the most valuable treasure they had brought with them from England, the gospel. Squanto died a year or two after coming to the aid of the Pilgrims, but before his death, he asked them to pray with him that he might go to be with their God in heaven. Squanto introduced the other Indians to the Pilgrims, and these Indians were also impressed with the Pilgrims' God. During the summer of 1621, it appeared that the year's corn harvest would not survive a severe drought. The Pilgrims responded by calling for a day of fasting and prayer. By the end of the day, it was raining. The rain saved the corn, which miraculously sprang back to life. One of the Indians who observed this miracle remarked that the Pilgrims' God must be a very great God, because when the Indians powwowed for rain, it always rained so hard that the corn stalks were broken down. They noticed that the Pilgrims' God acted differently by sending a very gentle rain that did not damage the corn harvest. It was that miraculous corn harvest in 1621 that provided grain for the Pilgrims' first Thanksgiving meal with their Native American friends and helpers. The evidence of history showed that on this first Thanksgiving Day, both the Pilgrims and the Native Americans thanked God for his great provision and his goodness toward them all. After the Revolutionary War, Congress and President Washington declared November 26, 1789, as the first National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving to the Lord. And then, after the Civil War had ended, Lincoln officially established the last Thursday in November as a day to acknowledge the gracious gifts of the Most High God, which he bestowed on America. Every president continued this tradition until 1941, when Congress officially made Thanksgiving a national holiday. Share this truth of the true Thanksgiving with others. Okay, I hope you kids enjoyed that, and always remember the truth and the miracle of how God provided for the Indians and the Pilgrims, and how God provided Squanto to teach them. It was pretty amazing and miraculous. And then also amazing how God protected them on the ship, and how they and their beliefs have been the basis of our country. And we just need to pray for our country that we will turn back to God. Thank you for listening.
Okay, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.